and officers.
Hello from the MKM Stadium, where Hull City have fought back to earn what might just be a huge point in their quest to avoid relegation from the Championship. For much of the second half, it looked like Coventry would go on and win a game again, courtesy of an own goal. We'll come to that in a minute. But Abu Kamara equalised with 8 minutes to go, and City, dear, yeah. I mean, they're giving teams. They're very generous, aren't they? In fairness, they give teams a bit of a leg up so many times, and they've got a point anyway, and they are 3 points above the bottom three, effectively 4, because their goal difference is so much better than Cardiff's with 4 games to go. It's not the 3 points that we all craved. That had they have won tonight, probably would have they'd have been almost there. But in truth, Coventry will be going back down the M62, M18, M1, M69 all the way home, kind of feeling like that's a game they've let slip by in their quest to secure a playoff place. But look, for City, it's Coventry, it's one of those strange games where I look back on it, and Coventry were the better side. I don't think anybody could argue that. Some of their play was brilliant. The one-touch, incisive play. They created some good chances. They're a better team than Hull City. The league table suggests that. They've got, in Matt Grimes, they've got a player that dictates the entire game from kind of a quarterback role. He almost drops into a defensive position, but he just dictates play. He's a joy to watch, and I think everybody that saw when they bought him from Swansea in January, thought that's a great signing. They've got Haji Wright, obviously former Hull City target, and they've got Ellis Sims through the middle. They've got, they've got a couple of good players out, but they've got a good side. But in fairness, City should have been in front at half time, because while Coventry had 3 or 4 good chances that Pandor, who was exceptional tonight, saved, it was City that carved out probably the gilt-edged chance of the half. It was Slater came in down the left-hand side, pulled it across to Palmer, no more than 6 or 7 yards out, and the goal's gaping. Brad Collins, the goalkeeper, comes out, spreads himself, but Casey has to score. I mean, a phenomenal block on the line from Grimes. He blocks it. It comes back to Palmer, who shovels it towards goal, and somehow there's about 3 or 4 of them on the line, and I think Grimes gets the final touch, sort of stops it on the line, and then fudges it clear. But that, you just wondered at that moment. And look, City tonight came into tonight's game having scored 40 goals in 41 games. It tells its own story. Only Luton have scored less in the entire division. We know they can't score goals. It is why they are. Their defence is not why they are at the bottom of the table. It's because they don't score goals. And when you get a chance laid on a plate like that to somebody like Casey, who is, a very, very good player at this level, you'd have backed him to score. And when he doesn't score that, you're kind of thinking, look, we might not get a better chance tonight. And in fairness, they didn't get a better chance than that, in truth. But you kind of felt they might get punished. They got through to half-time at 0-0. The Achilles heel. I said this. I sat in this exact position 2 weeks ago, well, just over 2 weeks ago against Luton, and I sort of made some, jokey remark about what's being done at half-time. Are they having lavender face flannels and all that sort of stuff? So much going on at half time. They come out comatose. They come out in the piping slippers, because they did again. They came out really lethargic, really just slow, and they allowed Coventry to do nothing special. Coventry scored, a minute into the second half without doing anything. All they did was put City under a bit of pressure, get players in the attacking third. Grimes they didn't clear a ball again. They must have had 50 attempts to clear it, but they couldn't clear it. And then the ball falls to Grimes. He swings his left peg. It's going nowhere near goal. It hits Charlie Hughes. Pandor's dive to his left. It spins to his right, and out of nothing really. They're a goal down, and it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. I think that's now 10 goals they've conceded in the first 10 minutes of the second half getting underway. It's a fundamental issue, and I've asked the manager about it on more than one occasion. I did again tonight, so stay tuned for that. But he's angry about it, and rightly so, because look, Coventry were the better side tonight. City looked like a team hanging on. City looked like a team at the bottom end of the table. They they look like Coventry look like a team that are playing well. They're confident. Of course, there's going to be a disparity. I think if anybody turned up tonight expecting City to go toe to toe, like we saw this time last year when City went toe to toe with Leicester and then Ipswich, we're not going to get that. This is a team that are fighting for their lives. But what they did against Luton, well, what they didn't do against Luton was they were inept after that, after conceding. It shocked them. And bar a little flurry late on, they never looked like scoring. At least tonight, they recovered well. They went at Coventry. Then Coventry had a decent spell. Sims went through. Pando made a good save. But they were knocking on the door without ever really kind of like creating a huge amount. That I say, they carved out a wonderful chance. I think it was Charlie Hughes played in Slater, who pulled it back for Coyle, has to score, blazes over the crossbar from 8 yards, 7 yards. And again, you're thinking, here we go, this is going one way. But what I would say is they kept going. And I think everybody in the stadium thought, hang on, what's he doing here? 58 minutes and he's bringing on Kamara, okay. But he's bringing on Amrabat. He's got Puerta on the bench. He's got Burstow on the bench at that point. Matt Crooks on the bench. Carl Joseph on the bench. And he brings on 37-year-old Nordin Amrabat. And there were a few jeers when he took Casey Palmer off. But what I would say, Amrabat gets on the ball and he gives them something to think about. And he's got that little bit of craft that they've been lacking. He can pick a pass, and boy did he pick a pass when he pulled one over the top for Kamara to run on. And in fairness, it wasn't a clean strike from Kamara. It wasn't clinical, but what he did do, he had a go. And, up until Palmer, 35, 36 minutes or whenever it was, they'd not had a single shot on goal. At least Abu had a go, and he bought a ticket, and he won the raffle. How many times have we sat here this season, in the previous 41 games, including cup game, or 41 games plus cup games, and we've gone, they don't shoot, they get to the edge of the box and they fanny around with it, they don't do anything, don't take a shot, and the chance goes. At least he had a go, and he got the deflection into the back of the net, and they got a point. Now some will disagree with me, but I would counter and say that for me, City were value for a point. Yes, Coventry were the better team. Yes, Coventry within parts of the game played really well, but when you look at the chances, when you look at Palmer has to score, you look at Coyle has to score, and then obviously they've got the goal they did. I think bearing in mind you're up against one of the better teams in the league that are, could be playing in the Premier League next year. I think you come away and go, you take the point. It's not three. You win tonight, you're pretty much there. But I think we always said when we looked at the final 10 games, we said on paper Bristol City away and Coventry at home. On paper, your two toughest games. I know Coventry have had a couple of difficult results recently, but they're a good side. They're a really good side. They've got some very, very good players, and they've got a very, very good manager in Frank Lampard. I think tonight's one of them nights. You've come from behind, you've taken a point. Luton lost, Cardiff lost. You've gained a point. You've got a bit of a cushion, and you've got four games to go. I still think, who was it? Sorry, just asked me that question just a minute ago. Sorry, apologies for the delay. I'm just trying to find Lee. Look, it's going to be tight, but Cardiff have got some tough games. I looked at those results over the weekend, and I thought, if you're Luton and you've had you go into that game against Blackburn, who have been, let's be honest, absolutely awful since Eustace left. You go into that game against Blackburn, that's got to be a home win. They had the setback before the game of losing Alfie Doughty for the season, and then Elijah Adebayo, he's out for the season. That's the game they couldn't afford to lose. They've lost against 10 men. Cardiff, really need to get something against Stoke City, who are down there. They concede 85 minutes and lose that game. I know Plymouth won, but Plymouth are still going to get relegated because they pull off a great result and then they'll get smashed 7-0. Who knows? The Championship is mental, and I certainly would never put money on it. But it's hard to imagine that bottom three changing. So I still think that there's a job to be done, and you want it taken care of before you've got Derby here. We don't want to be going to Portsmouth on that final Saturday needing to win the game to stay in the division. That is not where you want to be. I think this next two games will go a long way. Swansea, having had a pretty turgid season, have found, I think, 3 wins on the spin now, and they've beaten Derby at home. They've gone to Sunderland and won that. They've got Luka Modric on board, bizarrely. So, that's a game that City need to get something from. Then you've got Preston here on Easter Monday. Preston are on the beach as much as footballers can be. Their season is over, in the sense they can't go up, they can't go down. That's a game that City really need. If you could get 4 points from your next 2 games over Easter, you're safe. You're on 45 points now, City. That puts you to 49. Given the form of Luton now, having lost there, and Cardiff, I can't see them to get into, when you look at those games, and Luton play Derby at Pride Park. So I would be amazed if Derby don't get something from that, if Derby don't win that game. So they're in the box seat, job to be done. But I think getting that point tonight is absolutely huge. If you'd have lost tonight, you've come back from the break, you've been up fairly poor against Luton and got beat. Yes, you've won at Sheffield Wednesday, but you weren't great. You've then lost at Watford. You've then lost at home to Coventry. You're then asking yourself to go to Swansea and try and recover. And also it's what those teams below you, if Cardiff having lost and Luton having lost, then see City lose tonight, suddenly they get a bit of a lift from that going into that Easter weekend. But I think that it's just, look, City are in control of this. What I would say is, for 80 minutes, I'm thinking, it looks like they're gonna lose this, and they're right in the that's back-to-back defeats. You worry for them, but the fact is they've got a point. And Harry, I absolutely agree with you. Matazo starts tonight, Miller starts tonight, Bellumi starts tonight. So Louis Barry, probably, if he doesn't start tonight, he certainly affects the game. Christian, in terms of the subs, I'm not sure, because Amrabat has come off the bench and got an assist. Kamara's come off the bench and scored. You want your substitutes to come off the bench and impact the game. Well, admittedly, for the first 15 minutes he was on the pitch, Kamara never touched the ball. But Amrabat at times looked like he was going to run out of gas and he'd give the ball away. But he's a grafter, I'll give him that. I'm not sure you can say the subs were, at the time, certainly the Amrabat change, I think a lot of people questioned, but ultimately Amrabat and Kamara have come off the bench before the hour, and they've scored the goal. They've created the goal and scored the goal. So I think, I'm not sure what more you can say. So look, look, I just think you take the point and you move on. I think sometimes City have been so poor at times this season. There's been so many games where you've come away from it going, I can't believe they've lost that. Even if they'd just got a point, found a point to get from somewhere, they wouldn't be in quite such this predicament. Well, tonight they've fought back and they've got a point, and that's what they've done. Look, it's not going to be pretty. It's grim. It's not attractive to watch. But at least they found a way to get a point. If they lose tonight, we all come away hammering them and going, that was another whatever. And you go, Casey Palmer should have scored, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, look, Matty, I think it's difficult. I said this me and Swanee had a chat on the radio before kickoff on BBC Humberside. And Swanee said to me, he said, do you think he's getting the best out of the players? And I look at, the squad's not great. It's not terrible, but it's lopsided. There's no pace in it. There's no goals in it. They've got a lot of good players, but not players that are going to consistently hurt the opposition. Kamara was never signed. Let's get this straight. Kamara was never signed as Hull City's player that was going to lead them to the playoffs. They spent 5 million on Bellumi. They spent 3.5 million on Miller. Miller and Bellumi were your two frontline wingers. Kamara was brought in as a player that, would be given space, would be given time to grow and to develop. Yes, they paid a lot of money for him, but he was still young. He'd never played at this level. He'd come off the back of a great season at Portsmouth, but that was in League One. I think we have to factor in that suddenly, because of what happened to Miller and Bellumi, Kamara was thrust into everybody's kind of forefront. And everybody was expecting him to be the one that created everything and scored everything. Well, that's a big ask, and he's had stuff difficult issues going on away from football, that these players are human also. Let's not forget that. So that's affected his performance. And I still go back to his debut against Sheffield United. That he's come on for his debut. He's given a start against Sheffield United, and Walters hauled him off at half time. I mean, that's not great for a young boy's confidence, is it? So look, I think Abbey will be a better player next season for this experience, as I think a few of them. And he's Tommy, he's doing what he can do. I think we underestimate the how hard it is to take on a squad that are bereft of confidence and a bottom of the table in December. And it's easy to point the finger and go, yeah, but look at John Eustace at Derby with a weaker group of players. Yeah, but he lost his first 3 or 4 games. Yes, he then won 3 in a row, but let's not forget that he didn't come into Derby and have an instant impact, instant straight success. And Harry, yeah, maybe he is a bit negative at times, but I'm not sure he's got the players. I genuinely don't think he's got the players that he can set up to go attack. Because we saw that earlier in the season, they were getting picked off. Walter came in and went attack, and some god-awful others attempt at playing football, and they were just getting picked off time after time after time. You think of that, I touched the Sheffield United game, twice from a corner they've conceded. Their own attacking corner they've conceded. He's got to be more conservative, and as a consequence of that, their goal difference is may well keep them in the division. He had to be more. He's got to be more conservative. He's got to be tight. And he says they're competitive, and yes, I think there's an argument to say that being competitive isn't enough at times. You need to try and play on the front foot, but he hasn't got the players, I don't think, to be able to do that. João Pedro is 33, Amrabat's 37, Joseph is still unproven at championship level, as is Kamara. So I think it's sometimes it's difficult for him to be more expansive. I think he would love to be more expansive. That's, if you watch his Reading team, they were expansive. And I think next season, if he's got the players, I think you'll see a very different Hull City. But it's needs must. It's be tight, it's be compact, it's try and graft, and then find a way to win the game. Maybe create a moment, and they are capable of creating moments. We've seen it today. A lovely passage of play that Palmer should have scored from. The vision from Charlie Hughes. He could have popped it back in the second half for Coyle's chance. He could have popped it back into the box, but he paused, he waited. Crowd got angsty with him. Let's be fair, the crowd got jeery because they were like, put it in the box. He paused, he waited, and he played a beautiful ball through for Regan to run onto, and then he cut it back for Coyle, who blazed over. Coyle, he should have scored. They do create moments, but they're just not ruthless enough, and that is something that they've got to find a remedy. Christian, in terms of the striker, look, against Coventry tonight, they marked Pedro out the game, but the problem is he's not got any option. If he plays Joseph, Joseph doesn't really look like scoring. So he plays Pedro, who's got that bit of experience, that bit of nous, maybe can hold the ball up, bring somebody else into play. But he hasn't got he hasn't got a Haji Rai. He hasn't got an Ellis Sims. So he's got to do what he's got to do with what he's got. And look, I don't think the squad needs a massive overhaul in the summer. I think it needs a bit of work. It definitely needs some work. But I think if they can keep the majority, if they stay in the division, they keep the majority of it together with a solid pre-season, a structured pre-season, sign 3, 4, maybe 5 very good players, they've got an opportunity. But for me, there's 2 areas, well, one key area that they're crying out to get something in the team is pace. They're so one-dimensional. They've got to get pace in the team in the summer, and they have to find a way of getting more goals in the team. And maybe that's just having that break clause in the summer where players can reset, come back in the summer, get some confidence, and maybe some of these players can score goals next year. But the counter I would put to that is, if you look at their records over time, they don't really score. None of them have got great goal histories. So you're asking players that have never scored more than a couple of goals in a season to suddenly score 10, 15. Is that really going to happen if we're realistic? Probably not. They've got to go out and find some players that have got good records. They're going to, and it's going to cost money. But Sunderland can do it with Isidore. You know, Coventry have done it with Ellis Sims. City tried to sign Haji Wright, but didn't. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. You know, other teams in the Championship have got the ability to go out and sign strikers that are going to score goals. It's always a risk, but you've got to take it. And what you can't do, we cannot hang our hat on Liam Miller and Mohamed Baloumi, because you don't know how, you know, with the best one in the world, you don't know how they're going to come back. God willing, they come back even better than they were. I mean, Baloumi was on fire. Miller was just starting to show real signs of settling in. He scored his goal at QPR. He was brilliant that night at Loftus Road back in October, 1st of October, I think it was. You don't know how these players are going to come back, and invariably when they come back from ACLs, they then have a follow-up muscular injury, so they could get a hammy or a calf that then keeps them out for 6 weeks. That happens so often with players that have been out for so long with ACLs, and we don't know when they're going to come back. You know, we don't know if they're going to be back, you know, at the start of the season. It might not be till September international break or October. We don't know exactly when those two are going to come back. So you hope they will be, but you're going to have to wait and see on that. But look, they've got to sign in the summer. They've got to go out and get some pace in the team. They've got to go out and find some players that can create, not just create, but can chip in with goals, because, you know, that is the problem. Harry, in terms of Louis Barry, I know he was here on, was it Monday night? No, Monday night's tonight. One night last week, was it Thursday? There was a spot, anyway. I've lost track of all days. There was a sponsors dinner here, and he was back for it. He is training back at Villa. Hopefully, you know, there's a faint hope that he could be involved against Derby, but they're taking it day as it comes. We're back with the manager on Wednesday, so at the training ground. So we'll get another update on Louis then to find out when he'll be back available. But hopefully it won't be too long, because he has something different, doesn't it? Doesn't he? So look, I'm going to leave it here because it's 25 to midnight and I've got to go home and then start again and get a bunch of stuff done for tomorrow. So thanks for all your questions. There's lots. There is so much for us to dissect once this god-awful season's over. But hopefully tonight's point has just lifted spirits a bit. It's another home game they've not lost. And it's a point that could well be, who knows, it'll all... yeah, Chris, I think I think Panda will still be here next season. He's been absolutely brilliant. Interesting conversation about Player of the Year, but I think he's probably a shoo-in for it, which is phenomenal, given when you think of the conversations last January. Obviously, you probably would have seen Ryan Alsop's comments in the build-up to their defeat at Wembley on Sunday against Peterborough, how he felt his position was untenable. Difficult situation for Ryan. Obviously, Liam Rossini and the goalkeeping coach Barry Richardson had disagreements about Pandor and Alsop. And that's football. Football's all about opinions. That's no criticism of anybody whatsoever. Football is always about opinions. One guy thinks that player's better, another guy thinks another guy's better. That's just how football works. It's all a matter of opinions. Everybody, as fans, you've all got opinions. You know, one fan will think Pedro should start. Another maybe thinks Carl Joseph should start. That's the beauty of football. We've all got an opinion, you know, and they certainly had them last season with Pandor and Ryan Alsop. So it is what it is. But look, you take the point. I think most people probably, before the game, given how good Coventry can be, probably would have taken that point. In the context of how the game played out, 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go, you bite your hand off for the point. You've not lost. You're a point further clear of danger, and you go into Swansea. Lee, safe trip down there, by the way. You go into Swansea with a positive result in your pocket. If they can get a couple of results over Easter, they may well be safe by the time Derby come here on Saturday week. A lot of football to be played before that. A lot of work, because Swansea have turned it around a little bit, and they've got Lewis O'Brien in midfield, who is fantastic. City have tried to sign Lewis O'Brien on a couple of occasions. As good as anybody at this level in midfield. So I'm kind of excited to watch Lewis O'Brien for Swansea, but I hope he has a bad game, obviously, because I want Hull City to win. So, you know, Lewis O'Brien, Matt Grimes, those sorts of players, I feel that City need somebody that can control the game, can pick passes, can create, and can get their backside onto the line and stop balls going in the back of their net. But look, on one hand, it's disappointing they've not won the game, but I think on the balance of play, you take the point, you're a point further clear of danger, and you go into Swansea over Easter, and then Preston back here on Easter Monday, trying to get, if you can get, as I say, I think if you can get 4 points, I'd take your hand, snap your hand off probably for 4 points from those two games right absolutely now. Zambrano, hopefully we'll get an update on that in very soon. Quickly before I go, yeah, Matt, you make a great point. Hopefully Swansea put out the under-12s. John Egan went off tonight. A bit of dizziness, I think. It wasn't a concussion, Ruben said. He just felt a bit unwell with his vision. So they'll have to monitor him over the next few days. But hopefully nothing serious for John Egan. Everybody else, I think, a clean bill of health. Ready for Swansea. Right, that's me done here at the MKM Stadium. Time to get home. We'll see you. We'll have plenty more in the build-up to the game at Swansea on Good Friday. If you're heading down there, it's only £14.50 a ticket, by the way, for adults. And kids' prices, concessions are quite cheap as well. Heck of a long way, I know, but City, you know, they need all the support they can get down in South Wales. Heck of a long way. But if you are going down to Swansea, safe trip, everybody, and hopefully you'll have a positive result to come back and chomp your Easter eggs too. Thanks for watching, everybody. Plenty more to come over the next few days. And yeah, if you're down in Swansea, we'll see you down there. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody else. Up the top.